we need to change that intro. I need to change that intro thing because I was already getting ready to leave with that. We'll get that sorted for the next one. That was horrible. How are you, Isa?
I'm excellent. I'm doing great. Glad to be here back on with on our channel with Yerba Mate. So glad to
Yes,
be here.
we are here. I'm sorry, I had left my speakers on and it was making a mess of sound. All right, we're doing the second part of Arjuna and Daniel Hakikaju. Fun times, fun times. So far, Hagikachu is ahead, mostly because Arjuna is sucking really bad. So, if it were a boxing match, Daniel would be ahead, which, ew, I don't want to say that, but it's sad but true. Let me pull up the video and we'll get right on it. How is everyone doing? Let me say hello.
And I would say, just to piggyback off of that, the
Yes.
major problem with Arjuna's position is that he is not really providing or citing any sources. We did actually research the sources for Mr. Hakikaju,
Yeah.
Joe, and a lot of them seem to be dubious. That's kind of what we saw, that the way that they've been implemented is not really fair to the source material. A lot of it is a lot of it needs appraisal. We looked into it. Like, one of the narratives was an alternate narrative that the majority of people did not agree with, and it was a folk narrative, and it was not a part of the consensus. And that's really important when we're representing other people's traditions. We need to make sure that we are fairly and accurately representing them, right?
Yes,
And that does not seem to be the case. But the issue is, he does provide things, and he does make you work, and he does make you look for all the stuff. Basically, what Arjuna told us was, I'm a perennialist, which means basically that I believe that all these traditions, they have value and they're all going to a source. That's what perennialism is.
mm-hmm.
And then is critiquing Islam, and the critiques he has against Islam you can have in dharmic traditions as well. So he is not immune or protected from that, and he really does not clarify that. And then he basically tells us his own personal interpretation of the dharmic thought. He says he's an Ashtika practitioner, which is cool, but Daniel, I think, rightfully says that this is your own interpretation. And if you're going to be uncharitable and give your the best interpretation of these dharmic traditions, then you need to give the best interpretation of Islam, which he does not do. And I think it really hurts him. And with Daniel's approach, he's like, look, I'm not even really going to spend time defending Islam. I'm just going on the attack. And
Yeah.
he provides we might argue that it's a gish gallop, but I think that would be a fair argument to
It's
say.
always good to argue your position like like a positive thing. It's never enough just to attack. You have to also make your case, ideally. But Daniel is so far ahead that it doesn't really matter because the other guy is just
He really does not score any points, and his
yeah.
vegetarian arguments aren't even valid, because there are many Hindus that are not vegetarian. I've spoken with them. I've hung out with them, because I'm part of the South Asian community. So many South Asians, particularly South Asians of Bengal, you can go to Maharashtra, many are not vegetarian. It's only really the Brahmin class that does that, but that's a very particular class, and not even all Brahmins do that. So and there are vegetarian vegan Muslims. So this is a nonsense position.
Right, it's not a moral position. Like, who the hell makes that argument? We're talking about people's lives, and it's
Totally. But I mean,
such a minor thing.
using the argument that he presented, where he's like, vegetarianism is this moral thing, we're going to grant that. We'll steel man that and say vegetarianism is the most and vegetarianism is not even veganism. So it doesn't meet the threshold of veganism, where you're
Right.
not using any animals. So I'm like, if that is our standard, and saying that that's the highest ethical moral code, well, then you're the people in the tradition don't even follow that.
You're
So
not doing enough.
yeah, so you're not doing enough, and neither does your community fully do it. So it's like that's a weak argument that you have, and you have not proven that Muslims do not are not vegetarian and vegan. I grew up with Shia vegans, so I'm like, yeah, that's just not true. Your
There's vegan
position is not
atheists.
true.
Like it doesn't. Who cares what people eat? It's
Totally, I totally feel you. I'm just saying, based on his positionality, he doesn't win the vegetarian argument or the ethics of food of dietary. Sorry, we're doing a bit of a recap because we want to make sure everybody knows where we're at.
yes, because
Yeah,
it's lost it to the ether.
yes, it is. We're not going to explain why, right?
Yeah,
But he talked about dietary restrictions, um, and he doesn't really follow up with that. He basically says that the texts push a militant view. He's not safeguarded from that because the Mahabharata has a lot of military stuff. A lot of the heroes of the Dharmic texts are kings and warriors, and they have epic battles. Epic battles
yeah,
are rife throughout these texts. If you watch any Bollywood movie that are like epics from the past, they're
yeah.
always about epic battles where they're conquering and fighting. And I'm like, and then he's like, well, they were localized. I'm like, yeah, but doesn't prove your text is not violent. You could say, well, it's not expansionistic, but that doesn't prove that it's less violent. Maybe it's localized violence. That doesn't make it any less violent, So he doesn't win that position. So he argues that point. Um, yeah, and he was basically
It gets worse. That's the funny thing. It gets so much worse.
he doesn't quote Quran, he doesn't quote Hadith. He just basically says Islam bad, and I'm like, okay, all right, and he doesn't use Islamic scholarship. Now Daniel, on the other hand, does go into the scholarship. He cites tons and tons of texts. You know, he goes through text after text, like the Manusmriti. He goes through a bunch of texts. The application of the text is the problem. We don't know when we research the application of the text, it doesn't look good for the argument that he's making. But the point is, it works well in the debate because he is citing texts, and you don't have fact checkers who are going and checking the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage Daniel's team to like really go and research, make sure that you're accurately representing these sources before you take them down. I think the two arguments that he has that really overwhelmingly kind of beat Arjuna are the caste system. The caste system, he really
Right.
focuses on that. It works well. His scientific argument for it was not good. We researched that. It was not a valid argument on the science about like the endogamy, where he gave this
Yeah,
source,
the Aryan invasion.
and he was basically saying, well, look at this, ethno stuff. I'm like, Muslim people, if you're in South Asia, they marry their first cousins too. Like
Yeah.
that's not just a dharmic problem. That's in Islam too. And Arab people marry their very close relatives. So you don't win
It
that
happened
position either.
everywhere at
Everybody
different
does that.
times in history. It's happening
Yes.
less now, but it's still prevalent
Yes.
in many places.
And so that was not a good argument, on Daniel's
Yeah.
position. We really didn't like, it's, if you're going to make scientific arguments, you need to. This is a channel, we're our audience are primarily secular and primarily into scientific thought and reasoning. So you better have good science, and
Yeah.
not too good, right? So we
Sometimes
had that problem. The caste system was a good argument. He brought up the Devadasi, the
the
temple
child
prostitution. Yeah,
temple. Yeah.
that's a problem too. That
Nasty
we
stuff.
researched that. So those two things we think were solid. The part about the Trimurti, or the three kind of the Godhead assaulting the woman, not valid. We researched it. It just was not accurate.
The
Um,
horse thing, that
yes,
was also, yes,
it was from the
wild.
text, but that just because something is in a book doesn't mean that accurately represents information. And
Right.
we have to understand what the scholar is meaning by what they're doing. This is what scholarship is. It's not just citing sources. So we have to dive deeply. We did that. We found that was not good. We found the science was not good. What was the other position? There was another argument too. I think that we researched it and we're like, this is not accurate. There was one more
Don't
that,
remember
yeah.
exactly, but
But
we
those,
left
yeah,
off on Arjuna's rebuttal. And then they have one more round of rebuttals, and then they go into the open discussion.
great. So we've covered pretty much all the stuff, and I'll try to remember what
Yes,
it
I
is, and I'll
think
bring
so.
it back up if I remember it.
It will come up because they both repeated themselves a lot because no one was addressing what the other one was saying. You might have noticed that the freaking feline has not fulfilled its duty. I raised him from the street, the freaking ingrate, and I don't know if you hear it, probably not through the mic, but he is tossing his water, like his little water bowl, and he's trying to flip it and failing, and he's never done that before. And when I tried to go pick him up, he hissed, and there's water all over the floor, and I don't know what's happening because the kicking of the bowl is the first time, and the hissing at me, like when I went to ground him, was like. So I don't know, maybe fame got to him or he's going crazy. But let's see. RageBot says she can hear it. Yeah, dude, it's wild. Everyone was hearing it. Okay, yeah, I don't know. He blew a gasket or something. All right, let's do that. And did I share the sound? I think so.
Bottle, folks, if you haven't yet,
second, right? I get a second one too. Right?
If you haven't hit that like button yet, folks, do remember to hit that like button. The floor is all yours.
Sea Lion Prime says, hey. What's a Yerba, bros? It's this thing that I eat. I still haven't set my hotkeys. This thing that I drink. It's something that we drink in Uruguay. It's hot water. You've seen me drink this a million times. It's just, not that. It's kind of like tea, It's a tea that you can
You're
pour
on mute,
over and
Arjuna.
over.
Let me unmute you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I've got my mute over here. So again, we have the clutching of straws based on the genetic evidence. Genetic evidence doesn't prove that there was an actual war. You can have it just shows genetic flows. The Dravidian thing, I'm not super.
That's a lazy rebuttal. Like going to the problem is that it's hard to, if you don't know how are you going to rebut it properly? I don't know. Sometimes it's a weird thing.
Well, the thing is,
because he should have known better, but up to what level, right?
So to address the point that you just said, he needs to know, like, before you go in this debate, you need to know what people are going to say against your position. You need to be prepared for counter arguments. And the thing is, instead of just blithely just removing the points and just saying, yeah, it's not what I said, okay, moving on. What you need to do is focus on 2 or 3 of those points, right? And go really strong onto those points. And make sure that the points that you think are the most damning to your position, focus on those points and give evidence to why that's not the case. But just going quickly, because what we see here is he's quickly dismissing it and moving on, and that's not good. That doesn't impress us.
Dude, that is lazy.
Super clued up on this, but I've never claimed that through all of Indian history the highest ideal of Vedic teachings have been followed. Like Krishna came 5,000 years ago and said, I'm coming now because religious principles have declined and I'm here to revive them. There was a revival. There was a period where things were followed nicely again. And now India is once again in a degraded state. Dan gave some examples of India's current degradation. And the difference between me and him is I will point to those examples of immoral, egregious actions going on in India, done by Hindus, wherever I see it and say, yeah, that stuff's bad. But that's not following the Vedas. The Vedas actually teach something higher. He tried to shrug off this idea of a higher ideal, but it just shows that he doesn't know the first thing about the Vedas, Vedic hermeneutics, or the.
That is kind of true. But then when Daniel brings up like actual scripture, the guy dodges every single question. They didn't touch any of it. We didn't hear a single verse. Oh, well, I mean, Daniel kind of says what they say. We get the submarine and what he's talking about, right? But the guy dodged. We got more Hindu scripture from Daniel than from him. That's what I meant. Sorry. I said it in a very roundabout way, but that's what I meant.
Traditions they have. You study the Vedas by following a tradition. You don't just pick up a book and read it. You have there's lineages that are living, that have teachings. You pick one of them and you understand it according to that lineage. So he'd have to show me
the same thing as every other religion. You have people that believe one thing, you have people that's group. It's like, yes.
Vedic Sampradaya that supports his understanding of these things. I did a reaction video to a video he did it was a couple of years ago on this horse sacrifice case. We tried to find.
Joe Heron says, I know this is a weird thing, but I'm happy to see the name tags are back in the video feeds. You know what? Yes, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I didn't find a way to do it with Streamlabs, but we're back on StreamYard, so it's all good.
What he was quoting for the Vedas, we couldn't find it. We found one thing that was maybe somewhat related to it, and it was criticized. This horse sacrifice example that he's saying, this is the Hindu thing. You look at what the Hindus are up to. That one case that we could find that was maybe the one Dan was talking about from the Vedas was criticized for not being done right. So it's, yeah, what really matters in terms of which religion is more violent is which one has caused more deaths, more violence, and which one contains beliefs and injunctions which are likely to cause more deaths. He responded to my point on that and saying, well, if Arjuna came in charge of the government, then what would he do? You know, you have to have some violence. It's like, yes, you have to have some violence, but the violence needs to be according to the principles of ahimsa, which is you take out an aggressor when they're actively in their state of aggression to protect the innocent, or you dole out punishments to people who are criminals to take them off the streets and prevent those crimes from being committed. He's talking about apostasy laws where you kill somebody because they refuse to believe that God is a cosmic psychopath who will.
That is true. But it's the only like advantage.
But it's not good for his position because he claims he's a perennialist, so it doesn't work for his position.
Well, okay, yes, except for the contradiction that kind of reminds me of Whitson, that says one thing and then. Okay, I didn't know about perennialism like until this happened, you know. Muhammad says, hello.
Will do things like have you killed for believing in the wrong religion or send you to hell for eternity for believing in the wrong religion. That's just something I'm not capable of doing. I personally believe God is an all-loving being who will accept your devotion however you give it, even if you misunderstand it a little bit, even if you're following it according to another tradition. So when you believe God is a cosmic psychopath...
They're kind of... Okay, you can't... seems to be far away. Are you sure? Hold on, let me check this. I'm at 100%. I'll turn it up from my sound card. Hold on. There we go.
Path who's gonna kill people for believing the wrong religion, then you're gonna have genocide, because if you truly believe that preacher of that other religion is actively espousing a doctrine that is going to send people to hell, you will go and kill that person to prevent more people from going to hell. And this is what has happened historically with Islamic communities going around and wiping out Jews and other groups in order to protect their religion. It's an amount of violence that's gone on. I mean, Dan cannot point to a single contemporary example of violence going on during the period of, like, he's going back to prehistory.
And here was the biggest thing. Like, this guy was, give me examples of modern history, and Daniel was like, oh, look at the things of the past. And they both like got stuck in their positions, and it never got discussed. It's just a little echoey. No, can't be echoey. That's weird. Hold on. Audio. Ah, yes, you are right. Hello. Okay. Yes, the webcam microphone was enabled for some reason. Yep. Thank you. I'm sorry.
drawing on genetics in order to say there was violence. But and then in this modern examples he's giving of animals being abused, those people just aren't following the Vedas. I can quote the Vedas. We do have some prehistory stuff about from.
What happened there? I can quote the Vedas. Well, start. Quote me something.
Augustines about Indica. He went to India around the time of Alexander the Great and recorded how great the civilization was. And he noticed there was no concept of slavery. It was understood that all men were equal. There was animal hospitals. They had medical care.
Okay, so there's no slavery. This is kind of complicated because you can say there's no slavery, okay, but that doesn't mean that all men are equal. You can't say that if you have a caste system, right? That doesn't work. Like, you get a point for not having slavery, but not all men are equal in a caste system. That's not how that goes, right?
It's complex too. Like, what I don't like, if you ever see me debate when I debate about religion, this is one thing I like about myself, to toot my own horn, is that I love to be honest about the tradition I'm defending. I will not sugarcoat it and say, you know what, I'm going to misrepresent the tradition I'm defending and say it's just perfectly perfect and everything's great and wonderful.
We never did anything wrong.
In every debate, I will always call whatever I'm team accountability. I'm like, these are the problems that in the tradition that I'm defending for modern audiences. These are issues that we're dealing with. But this person here, Arjuna, is like, everything's good. You know, my what do they call it? My excretion smells beautiful. And I'm like, it's not. There is a lot of problems, and you have to be on it. You have to call out your own problems, because then what you do as a debater is you gain confidence, you gain credibility, you gain honesty. People like people who are honest in debates. People like that, where they're like, oh, yeah, I can believe what he's saying. The way he's talking, he sounds like a propagandist. He doesn't sound like someone who, I'm like, I trust this person. You know what I mean? And I trust what they're saying. It comes off, you're like, I don't really trust it, because you're telling me there's no flaws, and you're just kind of wiping away all this stuff, and you're not engaging it. Like Daniel, on the other hand, this is what he actually gains credibility. That's the word, credibility. He gains credibility because he's like, yeah, Islamic stuff, there's violent stuff here. He says that from the get-go, you know? He's just like, your stuff smells worse than mine, but he's like, yeah, this stuff is here.
Yeah.
But he owns that. But this guy's like, everything's good, vegetarian, there's no slavery.
Animal hospital.
I mean, this dude would be a perfect, like, Indian propagandist. Like, It's just like, India's perfect. And I'm like, yeah, not quite. South Asia's got a lot of problems. I am South Asian. There's a lot of problems there.
When he's concerned, like, if you're going to go down that hard, I said it a couple of times, like, maybe if you're going to really care about animals, tell how you have a temple for rats, that people go and they hang out with the rats and look at us, we're so cool, we don't kill even the rats. I don't know, Daniel could rebut and say that, like, that's disgusting, you freaking pagan, but it would be an argument. I don't know, go double down or something, but it's horrible. It's bad.
I also think that the so-called lesser castes were exploited. It may not be the exact word slavery, but it's pretty equivalent. Like, they were abused, probably faced, sexual assault and a lot of other horrible things. Yeah, you need to own that, and you can't just you can't wipe it away with a brush,
Yes, but that also means because we started because he said all men are equal, and like you can't if you have a caste, you can't. That's it. And if you can't leave the caste, which it was kind of enforced before, then it's even worse because you don't have mobility. But it gets so much worse than this.
Yeah, for animals. And
Oh, hold on. Earl asked, how old is this debate?
It's a couple
2 weeks
right?
ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
2,300 years ago in India, according to Megasthenes, who wrote this book called Indica. So, I didn't start my timer. Sorry, how much have I got? Okay. And so which other points was I going to cover? The horse sacrifice. Yeah, I think I've responded to the points you just made. So one of the points I wanted to bring up was the Barbary pirates. For 200 years, they devastated the coast around Tripoli, Morocco, and
yo ho ho. Love this. I love when people get stuck in a debate and just go like, but what about? What about? So we're going to let him talk about this. But spoiler alert. His idea is that if these pirates, which were a dime a dozen at times, there were many pirates in the sea at different periods of time to different levels of, with different levels of technology. There's pirates today. His idea is that the modern world owes everything to these people being caught, which is hilarious. So I'm sorry to spoil it, but oh my, how can you say that?
Whatnot. And when America finally put a stop to it with their naval fleet, that the American Navy was started to wipe out these pirates. And when asked by, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, why do you do this to us? He quoted the Quran and said, we have an injunction from Allah to mistreat and plunder, sorry, I've got the quote in front of me, non-believers. And I'd be delighted if Dan was to say that for 200 years, this group of Barbary pirates was totally misunderstanding Islam, and it doesn't encourage you to plunder and kill non-believers. But the slave trade that went on under the Barbary pirates was massive, went on for 200 years and was finally ended. And it's not too different from the wars that have gone on in the prior centuries under Islamic caliphates and whatnot. So again, the difference between me and Dan is I will...
India is at war now. So what's the point? Is that because of the religion or just... This dude is so weird. Like, who taught him to debate? I don't understand.
The big problem is he's like, I'm going to take this one group that's pretty uncharitable in history and say, well, this is the problem of Islam because they interpreted the Quran that way. I could do the same thing with people interpreting the Vedas in a very hostile... I mean, look at Hindutva. And Daniel brings this up. Hindutva takes a very extremist view of, the Vedas and uses it for oppression,
Right.
I'm like...
I think of another, for example, me saying, oh, Catholics are bad because they conquered the, America and everything. Like, it's what? I mean, there are, sometimes it is connected, but sometimes it's not. And when it's a group, like, you can't hold, how many billion Muslims there are? Like 1 and something billion Muslims. That's a lot of people. So this is ridiculous.
I agree.
Any example you can point to of something that is undeniably immoral, I can say that's not following the Vedas. Yeah, that's whereas he will actively defend apostasy laws where you kill people for not believing, which essentially means he thinks God is a cosmic psychopath, because only a cosmic psychopath would want you killed just because you were trying to worship God, but you misunderstood him. Because I personally think that the understanding of God revealed in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is the highest understanding, but according to him, God's going to punish me to eternal hell because I've misunderstood him. I just refuse to believe that God is that kind of cosmic psychopath. And I think when you believe God is a psychopath, you're going to end up doing violent things. And when Christians have believed stuff like that, they've committed violence. And when Muslims have believed things like that, they've committed violence. And then he rejected this idea of the Vedas having ideas of different ideals. Again, it just shows how he's just interested in painting Hinduism in a bad light at any cost and doesn't understand the first thing about Vedic teachings, because there's teachings in different modes of material nature. There's teachings for
When a nice idea for religious debate would be to tell exactly the person exactly what, so you can discuss your actual positions, because this generic debates, like, they let people just go like, oh yeah, that's not what we believe. It's so pointless.
Well, and also he was dishonest because he said, "You're painting Hinduism with a bad brush." I'm like, "You ain't painted Islam with a bad brush. You took this thing about the apostasy. You didn't give any kind of arguments of how apostasy laws may have validity. You didn't steelman it. You gave the most kind of uncharitable ruling to that, and then you're giving the most positive spin on your thing. That's not what a good debater does. That's not what a good lawyer does. What you do is you say, look, yeah, there are these things, you explain why these things exist, and then you say, okay, however, if I'm debating one religion to the other, the mechanisms of my religion overall have more flexibility than the dimensions of your religion,
Right.
And you have to take things in good faith, but like, he's really acting in bad faith. And the big thing that he does too that I really dislike here is he's kind of doing a Gish Gallop too. He's like, and I'm like, and then he tries to say these terms that no one will know what he's saying. He said some Sanskrit word about Gautama something. I don't know what the word was. It was so fast, right? He spit it out and he's like, here it is. Can we go back like 1 second? I'll try to get the word he said. It was some Sanskrit word about some philosophical religious thing.
How he's just interested in painting Hinduism in a bad light at any cost and doesn't understand the first thing about Vedic teachings, because there's teachings in different modes of material nature. There's teachings for people in those different modes, and the highest is given as Sattva-gun. Different Puranas are meant for people at different levels, and Amala Purana is given as the highest. Bhagavad Gita. Different Puranas are meant for people at different.
So it's Sattva-gun, and then he said Puranas. He doesn't explain what these things mean. That's very bad. Did you notice when I debated? Every time I talk about something, I explain every single term because I'm not assuming that you know what I'm talking about. Also, he has this very thick, what do they call it? Like the Aussie, New Zealand type of accent, which when he's saying the Sanskrit words, which makes it even more difficult to understand what he's saying. So I'm like, you've got to slow it down, bro. When you say me like this, you've got to explain what you're saying,
Yes, that's true, but we are at 125 speed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Yes, because it's long.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's my bad then. I didn't know that. But like, just the way he did. But even
he
with
doesn't
that
explain
speed,
anything. Yes,
he doesn't
that's
explain
the
that.
point. Yeah,
I didn't know that speed was that. But besides that,
we did. We've been doing it like that.
No, I get it.
It's the only way to. It's a way to suffer Daniel for less time.
This guy's not great either,
levels
though.
and
that's
the problem. We've got a dual problem here.
Yes, this was wild to see in real time.
The problem is that Daniel's more likable.
I don't have hair anymore, fortunately, because I would have just yanked it all out.
Daniel's much more likable.
Is given as highest by
just saying something. It's saying something.
And much more like secure. He has the argument, he has the rebuttals. This guy is just like, dodges and dismisses with one word and doesn't argue any of the positions. It's a little bit lazy.
The Gita gives the highest teachings, and in here we find concepts like ahimsa are like, and even with Manu Smrita, we can quote Manu Samhita. I can pull up a list of quotes from there that give really good injunctions.
You shouldn't be allowed to say I could do it. It's not I could, just do it. This is Witzit levels of debating. Pull it up, my friend. That's what we always say. I could doesn't work in a debate. I don't know how people get away with that. If you tell me I could on a debate, it's like, okay, are you going already to do that? Or are you sharing your screen?
and that cancel out the bad ones. And like I said, that the Manusmriti is widely accepted to have interpolation. So any bad quote he could pull from there, I'd be like, okay, well, how, can you prove to me it's not interpolated and that's the original text? And even if he can, those injunctions are not meant for now.
What? Just go to the sources. You know, there's scholarship on this. My good sir.
Because time moves on, people have different capacities, and there's different ways you govern different people.
Muted. Thank you very much for that 7-minute rebuttal from Arjuna. We are going to go to the final rebuttal itself. So this is the last round of rebuttals, I should have said. This is the final rebuttal. This is from Daniel for 7 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, can I share my screen, James?
Yep. Folks, if you haven't yet, hit that like.
I do have to say that getting new slides in the middle of the debate is I have to admit, I don't think I've seen many people do that before.
Well, putting slides in the middle of the debate.
Yeah, getting new slides together. Pretty baller move, if you ask me. Whether he does it himself or has someone helping. It's Matt says, "Hi peeps, pipettes, mate drinkers, and mate drink cats." Yes, but them's the rules. I have never seen Max wearing long sleeves. Yes, I'm wearing my turtle. I'm in tactical gear. Because, it's winter.
Button. Let YouTube know what you want more of. And with that.
Okay, I'll just touch on what Arjuna said at the end about interpolation in Manusmriti. This can be said about all the Hindu texts. Like, there is no original copy of any of the Hindu texts. The earliest manuscript of the Vedas is from just 1000 CE, like just the 11th century. That's the earliest, but the claim is that the Vedas are from 2000 BCE. So this.
My head is kind of spinning because Hinduism is way older than Islam. Like what?
That's correct. And this is the thing that I forgot. It's the Asvameda. That's the thing I forgot. We looked up at this situation. It's not what it says.
Right.
There was no penetration of the woman. That didn't happen. That's not what occurred. It was symbolic. Everything.
Yes.
All the scholars we researched it thoroughly. All the scholars say it was symbolic. So no, this didn't happen. There was a horse that went on a trip and did all of that. That first part is correct. But the part that he's critiquing about the, putting the privates,
yes,
like the donkey show, that did not occur. The donkey show did not occur. So that's the thing that needs to be clarified.
Is right. Pikachu is so bad faith. He is, but the problem is that you have to be on your tiptoe. It's like Wixit. He's not dumb, and it's all delivered. So you have to be on your feet.
But what is cool about what he does is that it makes you think. Most people don't know anything about this stuff, So we are going to research it. So we learned about this. I knew, as a South Asian person, I know nothing about this. I've never heard about this my entire life. So
Me neither.
It was new. It was a completely new thing for me. So we appreciate that. But we do. The thing is, what he's right about is these texts do say these things, right?
Yes.
That is accurate. It is correct. The problem is it is not contextually accurate. That's the issue,
Yep.
It's not from a scholarship. It's not contextually accurate. So, but the texts do say this. So I don't know. I don't know where they find these texts though. Like, how do you find this? Like, just like all the awful, like, do you Google all horrible things in Hinduism and these things pop up?
In like top 10 compilations from, Ricardo says, it's cold in Montevideo today. It is cold as fuck.
That's 3,000. The earliest manuscript is from 3,000 years after. So how do we know that it hasn't been completely interpolated? Like all Hindu texts can be interpolated. You can say that about anything. Let's go to the.
You go to the oldest version that there is. Like, again, another thing, like cherry picking a text, or it doesn't make your case either. Like, go to the scholarship and find, if you want to do that, make that argument, go to the old one, the oldest that you can find. And yeah, but a lot of these texts are not all complete, and Islam has the same problem, Daniel. Like, you're not safe from this. There are the burnings of the Qurans, and it's impossible. The claim that Islam makes how the preservation of the Quran, I don't buy any of it. I mean, you can't get away from some of the problems.
Well, I mean, what does that even mean, and why is that necessary for your faith? Why does the text need to be preserved? I don't think, like, the yellow pages are preserved, right? Does that mean the yellow pages are true? Harry Potter is preserved. Does that mean it's true? I mean, it's silly. It's a very silly argument that I think Muslims need to abandon. You know, I think the scientific miracles, the preservation, all of this stuff is silly and ridiculous.
So weird. It's to me that I've never, like, really got into this from young. It is so strange that someone would tell me, magical things in the real world, right? So it's always
Well, it's interesting that I'm taking the case and I'm pushing it forward, because it's like, I think these are silly things. Folks like Dr. J, Peter Markley, and I, we live in the 21st century. We understand what's going on, and we understand there's a different way to engage faith. You don't need to engage faith with, pomp and pageantry and magic tricks. You know what I mean? Look at my magic trick. My text is immutable. It cannot be changed. It's imitable. I'm like, you don't need to do that.
No, especially since you can do like 2 Google searches and get 2 different versions of the Quran, and that it's like game over.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, any religion that a person believes in, the why they should believe it is that, I know this is going to sound, kind of saccharine, but it makes you feel good. If this religion makes you feel good and it gives you purpose, that's the reason why you do it. Maybe you have cultural connection to it. These are valid reasons. You don't have to go above and beyond for your position. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
But especially you might be able to convince someone who's already prime to that kind of thinking, that I see that as more potentially happening than you convincing an atheist because you tell him magic stuff. I don't know. I can't picture that. It would never work on me. No freaking way.
Well, I think you and I are actually...
worth...
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think you and I are more like rationally based. So these types of things would not be impressive to us. If you said, these magical things occurred, that means it's true. I'm like, well, I think both of us would say there must be a logical explanation for this. If there's a voice in the sky that says, I am God, right? You'd be like, okay, that's cool, but how do I know if there's not some speaker? Maybe there was a hidden aircraft that has camouflage technology, and the speakers are coming from there. I would believe that first. You know what I mean? We're going to believe in rational explanations before supernatural explanations. But a lot of these people will take the supernatural explanation over the rational one. And I'm like, there's got to be a lot of reasons for why something is going on, that it's happening. And they do, like that guy, Peter Popov, who was a snake oil salesman. He was going to in his church, he was like, I want to hear, does anybody here have lupus? Does anyone here have lupus? And then he would do like what psychics do, this, the warm reading, the cold reading. They do these kind of tricks, right? Where they get people to give the information, and he would get cards where people would put their information on these cards, right? And then his wife, or with his speakerphone, would tell him that there are people who have these cases. So he would do the warm calling, the cold reading. He would do all of this stuff, and it made him look like he did miracles. Then he did illusion tricks where he would like make people's legs look like they were straightened out. These were all magicians' parlor tricks. And James Randi, I have to say I'm a big aficionado because he exposed all of it. There was this one guy who looked like he wore a Chinese, coat, right? And he would come out and he had he had the bob cut, the bowl cut. He had the bowl cut.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
He put a little bit
of stuff, and he would make it,
styrofoam.
yeah, and he would make it look like
blowing.
he was blowing. He did some kind of blowing technique to make the pages move, and it's like, and then he was also an offender of children as well. Of course, that has to be a part of it. He was in prison and he became an offender of children, where he would use his so-called martial arts schools to abuse children. So I'm like, this is par for the course. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of trickery, and we're not just going to buy the trickery because people say, here, look at my tricks, and I think we have to be rational, reasonable people. So
has to be a very, very, very good trick to fool me. Hold on, where am I? Yes, here.
Reading in depth. This isn't some like website that I've gotten this from. This is from University of Chicago Press, where you have scholars of Hinduism translating from the original Sanskrit, the Vedas, and other Hindu material, and it describes the Ashwamedha here. When the sacrificial animals have been quieted, the king's wives come up with water for washing the feet, 4 wives and maiden as the 5th, and 400 women attendants. They make the chief queen lie down next to the horse, then they draw out the dead horse's penis and place it in the vagina of the chief queen, while she says, may the vigorous virile male, the layer of seed, lay the seed. This, she says, for sexual intercourse. While they
I love how Daniel he wants to claim the moral high ground, and he always goes to find those like weird sexual things. It's funny.
You see that he's very enthusiastic. He's so happy to say this.
Like, yeah,
he's
look at this.
I got you. And you're a deer in headlights. You can't escape this. Look at this nasty, disgusting thing. I think what Daniel could have won, he just needed to show Temple of Doom. Show the priest, the chief priest coming and going, Kalima, Ashwadev, and then he pulls out the heart and he goes, whoosh, and he turns the heart on fire. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's how you win. And then have all like the Indian people eating bugs and monkey brains. I'm like, you won. He just has to show those pictures.
That's Daniel. I don't know. Well, why don't you talk about? I mean, it's a good strategy because most people are not really ready for arguments based on look at this kind of a thing. But yeah, he tries to find the dirt everywhere. It's funny.
they are lying there, the sacrificer insults the horse by saying, lift up her thighs and put it in her rectum, in her anus. This is the Ashwamedha. What's the mistake? Like, is this a mistake from whom? This is found within the Hindu texts and is referred to in the Vedas. And this is cited by the top Hindu scholarly authorities in the Western world. Again, he talks about no proof of violence through genetics. Again, I don't know what more proof does he want. If you are analyzing the DNA of modern Hindus, you can see within the DNA that there was a strict caste system because there is no mixing. There's no homogenization of the DNA. If you look at the DNA of modern Americans or even the Han Chinese within China, you see a lot of homogenization because people from different regions were meeting in certain places, in certain cities, in certain centers, and they were getting married and they were having children, and there was this kind of interbreeding that results in genetic homogenization. That is not the case with modern Hindu DNA. And the only explanation in the resources that I cited I showed on the screen from David Reich and others, is that there must have been endogamy. Endogamy means preventing interbreeding between groups. And this is endemic of the caste system. So this is not something the caste system is not voluntary. It was imposed by force. And all of the evidence shows that it is millennia.
I have to say why this is false. I have Hindu DNA. My family are Muslims because I'm a brown person. I'm Indian. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Indian people intermarry all the time. They have the Indian law has the special marriage law where people of different religions can intermarry. Look at Shah Rukh Khan, the most famous Bollywood actor. His wife's Hindu, Gauri Khan. So, and most of the Bollywood actors are Muslim and they marry Hindu women or have relationships with them. So yeah, no, that's just not true. And all the
Right.
brown Muslims were Hindus. They converted from Hinduism into Islam. So
In my like in today's world, it's not as harsh as before, but mostly because the middle class, like in New Delhi, you have people who just live in a sort of modern kind of. Daniel is making like a historical argument, but it doesn't really follow from today. And the biggest thing is that, and the other guy, Arjuna, didn't identify this, is that he could have said, he has the argument of, yes, it was like this at a time. We don't do that anymore. And that's it. You undo everything that Daniel is saying.
well, and he should use his whiteness now. Arjuna should say, look, I'm not even an Indian person and I believe in this.
Right.
I'm a white person who's doing this. So, like, look, I think that would have really helped him, That would have been a strength for him,
Old. It is a millennia plural of the caste system. Also, he keeps making a big deal about blasphemy punishments in Islam. There's blasphemy punishments in Hinduism. What do you think happens with all the lynching of Muslims happening in India for eating beef or even being suspected of eating beef? This is lynching Muslims is a epidemic in India. Why? Because of the concept of blasphemy. You're blaspheming against the cow god. So then you have this quote from another.
If one hears of blasphemy, right? But okay, numbers, Daniel. Like, is this happening? Because okay, we understand, but you can just claim, oh yeah, it's an epidemic, and not give me anything. So we'll see if he has
Well, one other point I want to add to that
the data.
is it actually hurts him when he said apostasy. Well, where do they apostatize from? Those Muslims apostatized from Hinduism.
Right.
So, I mean, you said that there's endogamy, so those 2 points contradict each other. The Hindus converted to Islam. That's the facts, okay? All the Muslims say, I am Persian. I'm from Persia. I am Turkish. Yeah, you might be 2%. The 99% else is Hindu. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're like, we're not Hindu. We everything but a Hindu. Because Muslims have a caste system too. In India, they do. And Pakistan and Bangladesh, they have their own caste system too. They have the Muslim caste system. You know what?
I
how
mean,
it goes from there?
we have a caste system in all the West. Like, there's poor people, there's middle class people,
you're right.
rich, there's uber rich. It's just that it was a little bit historically going back in history, right? It was more enforced, but so was the peasantry and the kingship and the court in the Middle Ages. Like, this is not that big of a deal, I think. Right? And now, if it gets, you can still be a Hindu and still think that the caste system is kind of done with. Right?
Well, and I think that's fair, and I think it's interesting, just this idea that you can make that point. And the thing is, you could say, well, Muslims have a caste system too. Like, there are ways to navigate this point in your favor. And I was going to tell you about the Muslim caste system. The Muslim caste system, how it works is how little Hindu you are. That's the point. You're trying to say how little of my ancestry is indigenous South Asian. That makes me have more value. It's so ridiculous and crazy, but that's it. You're like, I'm 10% Persian, I'm 50% Arab, and I'm like 5% brown. And I'm like, but you look like the other brown people. No. I'm like, you made up a story. You're 90% brown, and maybe 10% Turkish and Persian and Arab all mixed together. Okay, let's be honest here. Let's own it.
Sorry, it's horrible, but I laugh because, like, how do you know?
Well, what you do, it's claims. You're making claims. You said, my great grandma come from Arabia. They come from Yemen. My family Yemen. My name Yemen. My name Quraishi. I am from Quraysh tribe, great, and they sound just like that, right? I from Quraysh tribe. My name Bani Hashim. My name Alvi. I come from Ali family. Imam Ali Karbala Waj. My ancestor.
Yes, like wait, what were Kyle Adams the other day on the flat Earth debate?
Oh, did he
was
claim he was a
like,
descendant of Mormon prophet Joseph Smith?
yes,
God!
but
Oh my
not
God!
only that, not only that, he claimed like a bunch of famous people, like from history, claimed them all, and I was like, what?
Well, because they're
Yeah,
big into genealogy, LDSs. So yeah,
that is so.
they see Muslims will fit right in there too. They're like, my genealogy come from Persia. They come from Iran. They come from Arabia. They come from Turkey. Nothing. I am not a brown. And I'm like, yeah, you're brown. You're from Hindu ancestry, and it's okay. You need to get over it, but you are. Like
Who come and
Pakistan's my
said-
favorite.
Who come and said caste system versus class systems? Yeah, but
A class system is
functionally,
it's a class system.
it's a
It
class
is.
system,
It
right?
may be a more like entrenched class system,
more
but it
loose.
is.
Like if you, I don't know, if you bake cakes and you're poor, you might, I don't know, gain some upward mobility.
But you know what I
like
think about this?
following the dream and working hard. Like that's the idea of the system, right? It's not that it's forbidden.
So
The
this
caste
is,
system has loosened up so much in India today that it's functionally the same today.
so
yeah.
this is what I think. So when we think of a German Shepherd, what's a German Shepherd? It's a dog. So I would say a caste system is a form of a class system. It is a caste system is a class system, but it's a specific kind of class system, right? You have the South American one where they talked about like the I don't know the Morenos or whatever, like the whatever mulatto, like how black
Mulatto,
you are. Yeah, that's
He's about
octoroon,
that
whatever it
kind of
is. But it's the same kind of thing. So that system is a class system, right? The caste system is a form of a class system. They're all types of class systems. What kind of class you are, because that is what the castes are. Am I from the knight? Am I from the warrior class, the jati? Am I from the priest class? Am I from the artisan class? They are classes. There are classes: the artisan class, the priest class, the nobleman warrior class. The kind of the street worker class. You know what I mean? Like artisan, and then like homeowner. It's very much like the feudal system too. They have that too in the Japanese feudal system also. And then you have the untouchable class.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all classes. So I would say, yes, the caste system is a class system. That would be my argument.
Right. And it is mostly because we have grown as a species in general. We are a little bit more kinder to each other, right? So we have
to engage the point of what Max said.
Yes.
But trades are still, but they are classes too. In this context, they're classes. Like a doctor, a lawyer versus the trash man are classes. They're professions, but they're classes too. If I'm the lawyer, I'm from a higher class than the person who's the garbage man. You know what I mean? They're viewed differently. They make different incomes. They have access to different resources. They have different social capital networks. So trades are, and it's not easy. It's not very easy with the social mobility type of situation. The Japanese castes are not based on Buddhism, by the way. No, they're probably based on Shinto. So the indigenous Shinto tradition.
What? This one?
Yeah. And the thing is, what Huhaman is arguing is it's a kind of a sanitized version of this. But what I'm talking about, looking as an outsider, looking as sort of an Orientalist, looking at this, not as an insider who imbibes all this information, but critically analyzing this from the outside. So from the outside, it is a caste system. So internally, they're like, oh, no, we're just staying true. But I'm like, no, if I'm a priest or if I'm a Kshatriya, I am of a different higher class bracket than the person who is a Vaishya or a Sudra. The Vaishya and Sudra are not considered the same. So, I mean, I'm glad that you study in Japan, but Buddhism, do you know about the different kinds of Buddhism? There's Theravada, there's Vajrayana, there's Mahayana. So Buddhism doesn't have that type of thing, because what Buddhism actually does is Buddhism is a critique of the Dharmic traditions. It promotes the idea of anatman versus atman. So atman means like a perpetual self. Anatman means there's no self, right? So there's this idea that the whole goal is that you have to get nirvana, escape all of these types of suffering. The whole goal is that there is suffering. It's not about caste systems. So it's about the indigenous tradition. Buddhism, it would completely, like, if we're looking at Siddhartha Gautama's teachings, it is an utter rejection of caste systems and class systems. It rejects that completely. So did people who call themselves Buddhists, who are probably using indigenous Japanese practices, use this? Yeah. Europeans used Christianity to promote their narratives, but it's not Jesus's teaching. It's not, they're just using them as like window dressing to promote whatever their indigenous cultural narrative is.
Right.
So that's what we have to understand. We have to understand this anthropologically speaking. So, yeah.
All right. Let's see what else Daniel has.
Hindu text. If one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and controller of religion, one should block his ears and go away if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill, then one should by force cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender. And after that, one should give up his own life. So not only do you kill the blasphemer, you also kill yourself if you heard the blasphemy. This is
People were a little bit drastic, the ones who wrote this. But that being said, remember when we were reading the book of the 1000 Nights and the Night? There, when people people hear blaspheming and that kind of thing, or they see a jinn, or they are grieving and this and that, there's many times that as a reaction in that book, people just tear off their clothes. They tear off their robes, like in a frenzy. So Daniel, like, what are you talking about? People were drastic, and it kind of means that the message of that is, what you call it? Blasphemy is bad, right? But when have you heard about Hindus doing that, like today? A murder suite. Oh my.
far more extreme than anything that you can say about Islam. He keeps saying that Abrahamic God is a psychopath because there are punishments or there are consequences in the Abrahamic religions like Islam or Christianity or Judaism. First of all, Hindu texts also speak about hell. I refer to a bunch of them. Second of all, what is more cruel than the idea of a caste system or the idea of reincarnation as a cockroach? You don't meet your dharma, your caste duty within Hinduism, and therefore you're reincarnated as an insect. Or
I mean, he's not wrong. Like, it is a wacky thing to believe that you can reincarnate down. Because how do you, for example, me cockroach, how do you, Max, yes, that is true. But to try and address Daniel's argument, I'll put it on screen. Yes, you're right. But let's say you reincarnate down. Do you know, Isa, how does the snail or the cockroach or the fly reincarnate up? Because they don't make like moral actions.
It's much harder. It's much harder. Yeah, it's like next to impossible. That's why you got to make sure that your karma is good. Perhaps one could argue that maybe you kind of moved a rock and you helped support, like if you were like a little worm and you pushed a rock that may have, a little piece of pebble that may have crushed an ant or something, even though you may have not intentionally done that, that karma that the worm got.
Keep going down. Right? But that is, they have no intent. That makes no sense. That is actually something very, very stupid to me. To think that people reincarnate down.
Well, I think the reason for it is it creates created cosmic justice, but it has problems. The idea is it's supposed to engage this justice. That's what afterlife usually does. It kind of suits the issue of justice for people who suffer in this life. You know what I mean? That's usually what it is, but it has its flaws, you know.
Yes, glaring. It's wild. I honestly don't understand how people can believe that still today. But well, people believe all kinds of shit. But okay.
Or a bug or a dog, and then you're abused. Or worse, you're reincarnated as a Dalit, as an untouchable, or a Shudra, and then you have to be abused, spat on, insulted, live as a slave. Any kind of injustice can be inflicted on you, but you deserve that. Why? Because in a previous life, you didn't meet your dharmic duty. It's justified to abuse the
duty.
Dalit. It's justified to step on the Dalit's face because he has not, in a previous life, met his dharmic duty. Also, again, we didn't see Arjuna at all mention or explain the Chakravartin ideal. The ideal within Hinduism is to conquer the world. That is the Kshatriya ideal of the Kshatriya warrior caste, and the Kshatriya ruler, the Kshatriya king, is supposed to take over the entire world to impose.
Muhammad was a warlord. What do you have? Like what?
With an uncharitable reading, yes, you're correct.
A bunch of people did war. All kinds of people did all kinds of war. Like, what are you? Ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
The dharmic purpose, as Arjuna so eloquently put it, the Chakravartin king imposes the dharmic purpose on the entire globe. That is conquest. He mentions the Barbary pirates. Yeah, the Barbary pirates is just a response to the Atlantic slave trade. Have you heard of the Atlantic slave trade? Africa fights back again, I guess. The Muslims fought back against the Atlantic slave trade, and they gave America a taste of its own medicine. Now, if you want to talk about slavery in general, I've talked about slavery in other debates. We can go into that. I don't think that slavery is an immoral practice because every religion, almost every religion.
He said the thing that he's known for saying. Daniel, the fact that we acknowledge that slavery is happened in the past, that's like, what are you doing? Like, you can't say that slavery is not immoral. Like, what? Daniel, we don't do that anymore. I don't know. He probably didn't get the memo.
And every major culture endorses slavery in some form or another, and there are reasons for this that we can talk about.
No, we don't. Like, working is not being a slave, Daniel, you piece of trash.
And you can watch it in previous debates. I wanted to go and look at the caste rules again because I think some of you might appreciate looking more closely at the caste rules and how extreme they.
Dude, wait. Did you see that? Isa, are you looking? So we get a little snip, a little view of Daniel's desktop. And he has like a bunch of tabs with Hinduism violence, Skeptic Squad, a bunch of messages in Telegram, and then starts scrolling. I think some of you might start scrolling through the slides, and look where the thing is. It's kind of halfway, and he's already 123 slides. Oh my God. I told you he's on a crusade against the Hindus. This is hilarious. Because remember, Isa, we were wondering if he made them, but look at that. That is wild. I've never seen, I think Tony has like a really long presentation. But this is insane.
Appreciate looking more closely at the caste rules and how extreme they are. Again, Arjuna has not talked about these texts. You are mutilated for not.
He has a freaking point. Arjuna, you failed.
Being servile. Multiple texts talk about you should be branded on the hip if you're a lower caste and you are you just sit in the wrong place as a lower caste member.
Daniel, cutting of the hands. I'll just do the summaries.
You should be branded and your buttocks should be cut off. If you are arrogant, your lips are to be.
Do they cut one cheek or both cheeks? Let me see, because that's the thing we need to know. Manusmriti 8281 281 shall have his buttocks. The way that it says it, it probably means both.
Oh boy. I love that he what he does, it is very honest, is that he puts the sources to the text. He doesn't just say, hey, I'm just going to claim these things. His opponent, Arjuna, does do that. Arjuna makes claims and does not tell us where these things are. He's like, the Quran says it. Okay, where does the Quran say it? You know, he may, you know, there may not be an exegesis for either of them, but I think that's important.
It doesn't. It doesn't say. I asked if both. Let's change cheeks to glutes because it's not giving me a result. It's not giving me the verse. No, guess we'll have to ask someone from a Hindu person. But that's. I mean, that's what we all want to know. But like I said, Daniel, if you steal something and you get caught in the Quran, you suck. Ricardo asks, is this for real? Yes, but it's like these texts are all filled with this kind of stuff because they're ancient and people were barbarians. People were savages.
So
and we got civilized.
So what I remember from this stuff, studying these things like the South Asian culture, there's a certain kind of trajectory that a South Asian person is supposed to go through. They go through kind of a student's life, then they go through a householder's life, you know, like being married, and then they go through kind of like, you know, kind of separating from their wife, and then they go through like a renunciate life. So they have these different chapters in their life that a person is supposed to go through. So there's a lot of like hierarchies and these the important thing is we see this in even East Asian culture. There's these kind of relationships that people have, right? You have you're supposed to have fealty to the emperor, right? The wife has to have fealty to the husband. The children have to have fealty to the parents. You know what I mean? It's this type of, you know, kind of hierarchical relationships that did exist in ancient cultures. This is kind of the norm. I think that is what we see in Manusmriti 8282, which is showing the kind of hierarchical, patriarchal types of elements. So this is the idea of the property, is that children are property of their parents. But we see this in modern Christianity in America. That's present also. You know what I mean? So that's the same thing. You know, you are the property of your parents, but
right.
It just depends on the way you look at it. But not all Christianity does that. Not all Hinduism does that. Not all Islam does it. It just depends on your variant, depends on your conservatism within the narrative. I want to look at the Gautama.
Right, but what's the difference? What's the difference between cutting someone's butt off or, I don't know, like the Old Testament stoning someone to death? It is not. And then if you go like, you can just choose a random time and you can find, except more recently now, you can find like atrocious stuff like the burning people at the stake or hangings, and all religions did that all of that at different times. And even today you have the death penalty in some places, so it's not I don't know how you can make the argument when you're in the exact same position. Daniel, what part is it that he doesn't understand? You can't make the accusation when if you're making a historical argument, it applies to you too. Makes it invalid.
So what I think Daniel is doing here is Daniel is saying, you're critiquing me. I think Daniel's like, fine, I accept corporal punishment. I accept these types of things. This is under divine ordinance. What we're doing is under the ordinance of Allah. So there's no problems here, and we're more ethical in everything, in every way that we do this. We may do the same things, but we do it in a more ethical way than you do it, right? And why he's doing this now is he's saying, oh, you're critiquing me for these things? You have the same problems. So guess what? Your argument's moot. I will accept that we have violence in Islam, and it's done under divine ordinance. You claim that you don't have this. Let me show you you do have this. So I actually think what he's doing is completely fair, because Arjuna's tactic is dishonest. He took a dishonest tactic of trying to whitewash Hinduism. And this is the point of why Daniel is able to defeat all of his opponents, because all of his opponents are very dishonest about the traditions they're defending, right? They're like, oh, our traditions smell good. They're all beautiful. They're all perfect, right? So he's like, oh, really? Let me dig in these texts and show you that they have flaws. Just in the same way, he cracks the veneer of what is presented, right? And that's why he wins, because he owns his stuff. He's like, yep, I've got stuff that is controversial for modern audiences, right? But guess what? They're divinely ordinated. They are regulated. You don't have regulations. You just have this horrible, violent chaos, and it's not even under God. So your thing is just full of lies. That's why I think he's doing what he's doing, and I think he does it successfully. Because if Arjuna did not take the moral high ground, he wouldn't have to face this rebuttal. And I think he pays the price for it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And he also couldn't even identify, like, yeah, dude, this is a self-refuting argument. Victoria! Both going up against MC Toon on the third stream, but okay, I mean, it's never going up against. It happens sometimes. When I talk to Isa in the afternoon, Toon stream hasn't gone up yet. It happens inevitably, so there is no problem.
Cut off. If you urinate in the wrong place, your penis is cut off if you're in a lower caste. If you break wind, if you pass some gas as a lower caste member, a Dalit or a Shudra, the anus must be amputated. This is
what? How does that even work?
Is what the caste rules teach. This is what is imposed. This is what is imposed by force through violence. Okay, this is not, and again, the genetic evidence proves that these restrictions existed, that caste was, at the very least, restricting who you could or could not marry. Lower caste should be given insulting names. Lower caste should be castrated and executed for lying with upper caste women. If he has, the lower caste member, criminal intercourse with an Aryan woman, his organ shall be cut off and all his property confiscated. If the...
Ooh. Like, why isn't it on purpose that he finds everything is he has a fixation? I mean, I'm starting to think that Daniel is even more of a pervert than me.
So what
Max says amputated anuses get turned into anticuchos.
Women had a protector, he shall be executed.
I'm sorry, Isa. Yes, go.
So to engage this point here, I think what he's doing is he's like, I think the point is, yes, it's
BB right back.
Oh, that's fine. I'll continue. The major point here is he is engaging the kind of hostile narrative that Arjuna brings up. Arjuna goes and says, hey, Hinduism is this beautiful, wonderful ocean of love, compassion, and mercy. And he's like, huh? Really? You want to see that? Let me show you all your legalistic texts. And I think he succeeds. I think Daniel succeeds in this. There is a lot of work of what's happened to the untouchable class, what happens to women. There's a lot of patriarchy. We can bring up the Ramayana. The Ramayana has a very difficult story about, the protagonist Sita. She's one of the protagonists. Rama and Sita are the protagonists, and Sita has a very difficult time, and Sita gets, accused of infidelity because she may have been assaulted by Ravana, the demon king. So this creates a lot of issues, and you've just got to be honest with the text. You've got to be honest with the literature. And yeah, so basically, Max, what I was saying in a nutshell is he goes in and he looks for the most controversial stuff, and it's because why he does it is because these people are very lukewarm and they're just sweet and nice, saying my stuff smells good. He's like, oh yeah, really? Look at all of this. Let me show you all of it. And it is true. Yeah, maybe not to the extent of what he's saying. It's not as extreme as what it's saying, but it is talking about rigid patriarchy. It is talking about rigid misogyny. It is talking about rigid difficulty for people who are not of the upper classes.
But
That
it's
is what he's saying.
but it's so much older than Daniel. Like it's so much older. People were, I think, a lot of things in the cases of morality and human development and human rights and that kind of stuff.
You're 100% correct. The problem is that Arjuna is acting like there isn't a history.
That's
the problem.
That he's being like very dumb. I'm trying
And
to think.
dishonest.
I'm thinking like myself and not like him. But yes, he's bad. He's so bad.
This is why
Executed
Daniel is
afterwards.
with this.
Yes.
I would agree. If Daniel was debating me, like if I played the Hindu, right, I would go and uncover all the problems that I have with Hinduism, like my issues internally, and bring it up from the get-go and be honest about all of it. Right? Arjuna's like, I'm going to just give you the most positive, sweetest version. So when he does that, he allows Daniel to counterattack. And that's why Daniel succeeds in this, because if Arjuna didn't say, I have vegetarianism, we have localized conflicts, the caste system's not bad. All it
It's
is
voluntary.
It's like it's like what Muhammad said. We're all about staying true to the caste. We're just doing our duty. We're doing our dharma. We're doing our bhakti. We're just doing the right things for our space. We're just good, sweet people. There's no Hindutva here. There's no oppression of women. Everything's wonderful and good, and it's lollipops and butterflies and magical rainbows and unicorns. That's what Arjuna wants us to believe Hinduism is. So he's like, okay, you want to say it's rainbows and butterflies? Let me show you what it is. And it's a crucifixion, man. I don't know. It's a cold stop battle.
I added you to the team, so try to bring yourself down and up from the stage for a second, make sure it works. Or maybe you need to refresh.
I think I have to accept you. Do I have to accept?
Oh, yes, you probably, maybe.
I'm going to accept your
email
invite
or
first.
some stuff like that. Yeah.
I got your
that. We go
on. Okay.
Thank you very much for that rebuttal. We're going to jump into the open dialogue. Folks, if you have any questions, shoot them into the old live chat. You can tag me with that modern day debate. Otherwise, super chats will go to the top of the list. And with that, gentlemen, we're going to go back and forth. So these are in 2-minute increments. We'll start with Arjuna for 2 minutes. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I want to start by challenging this Manu Smriti thing. So I mentioned that it's accepted to have interpolations, and then you just keep quoting it anyway. So if it's not, like, either you need to defend that the Manu Smriti is intact in its original form, or you need to stop quoting it. Bhagavad Gita, we can know this is in its original form, and Bhagavatam too, for pretty much the same reasons. Bhagavad Gita is the Bible of India. People memorize it. If you had a copying error in a transcript of it, people would notice. And Bhagavatam has very complex verse, so if you make a mistake in it, you'll mess up the verse. We don't have
lame. That doesn't work. We have clones. There we go.
Got it. I'm good.
Awesome.
Yep, I have access to everything
transcript
now.
issues between different versions of these books. So yeah, Bhagavad Gita we can rely on, and we can know this is that. So why do you keep quoting Manu Smriti and digging up this stuff, especially considering the fact that Manu Smriti is considered time, place, and circumstance. It's not for all times.
Here you go, Daniel.
And Suna doesn't have that? Wait a second.
Yeah, so
Islamic Sunnah doesn't have that, bro? You don't think that, you know, in Sunni Islam, they don't have the same thing where there's contextual things and there's, you know, legalistic things for each thing? You don't know enough about Islam, bro, to make these arguments. You're like, yeah, well, my Hinduism has it, but Islam is like this. It was the same thing when I had that conversation
Right.
with our good friend Tyler. Tyler took the same position that Arjuna takes, where he's like, yeah, it's just this absolutist vision. I'm like, you do know that Salafis and Wahhabis are not accepted by the Sunni majority. The Sunni Muslim scholars do not accept these people because they don't agree with the lineage of scholarship. Sunni Islam is like rabbinic Judaism, and it's so bizarre. I'm like, he doesn't know enough about Islam to make these kind of parts. You know, I'm glad I'm doing a master's degree in Islamic studies. I've learned a lot, and it gives me a huge toolkit in engaging with these particular things. You know,
Right. Yeah, I feel like sometimes both go and in a very flat earther move, I might add, they accuse of something they also do themselves, which is
100% correct,
a
brother.
bit odd as a strategy.
So where in the Manusmriti or any Hindu text give me the Gita? Where does the Gita say that the Gita is the Bible of Hinduism? Where in any Hindu text, religious text, does it?
Down here in Uruguay and Argentina, Gita is money, but in a kind of like in a bit of a weird way. Like, for example, if you're requesting someone to pay a debt, like, ¿dónde está la Gita? Like, where is the Gita? The exact same pronunciation. Weird coincidence.
Say that the Manusmriti should not be relied upon, these other Puranas should not be relied upon. Give me some kind of reference. Like, this is just neo-Hinduism. It's just a modern kind of political response to liberalization and Western colonialism. But this is not very compelling. And we can do the same exercise with any religion. Any religion can say that, well, you can only take from Islam only one chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha is the only text that we can rely on in all of Islam, and it says that we're just worshiping God and we're asking him for guidance. Everything else, well, we can't really tell, so forget about hadith, forget about the rest of the Quran, forget about any kind of statements of the scholars, the pre-modern Muslims, the pre-modern Muslim authorities, forget about all that. So this is just such a lazy attempt to whitewash Hinduism.
Well, Daniel, we already mentioned this, but since it was lost, we'll mention it again. If the religion has the internal capacity to renew, then this argument becomes moot. And he's been saying, like, we don't do that anymore, right? And they don't do that. They don't do a lot of things anymore. So and we had a bit of a difference of opinion here last time, Isa, in that, to me, this is an external critique, and that just makes the argument not worth much. Because Daniel values what was it, Bida, the prohibition of innovation in the religion, right? But he's judging Hinduism based on that, and not on the fact that Hinduism is okay with innovation and new interpretations, etc., etc.
Oh, I see your point. You're basically saying he's implementing his standard onto Hindu
the other
thought.
side. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, if that's what he's doing, then I agree with that.
Exactly. I don't care. This is exactly the same sensation when I get when he accuses Christians of being, pagans. Let's be exaggerated for just a second, of being pagans because they believe in the Trinity, and then goes like, yeah, monotheism, it's the best, yeah, let's go my team. And it's just like, who cares? Like, why does that particular thing is important? What about if you meet someone that's Norse or Greek and they like fully believe in the pantheon? What makes one god quantitatively better than a pantheon of gods, right? Or spirits of the forest or whatever other magical thing you can probably think of. It's just another story, right? But he puts such an emphasis, oh yeah, it's one God. And it's just rooting for his team, basically. Like he has his own football shirt. It says like, yeah, my team is the best. No, for no reason. Oh, you're coming and going. I thought you were going to say something. Continue.
Hinduism. And again, the Manusmriti itself is saying that it should be taken as an authority. The Vedas are an authority, and then other texts, like the Manusmriti, say that we should take the Vedas as authoritative, and then the interpretation given by the Manusmriti. So you're not contradicting this by saying, oh, well, we're in different times. The Manusmriti was for a different time. The Manusmriti doesn't say that it's for only that time and place. Where in the Manusmriti does it say that? And then the third point is that you're claiming that the Manusmriti has been...
Do you think Daniel read it all, Isa?
No.
Interesting. I don't think so either. I think he has the Reddit style kind of a thing.
Corrupted, there's been interpolations. You can say that about all Hindu texts. If you say that the Gita is preserved, the Gita is... What about all the Hindus that were practicing Hinduism before the Gita? Are you saying that the Gita is something that Hinduism, that predates Hinduism, or is that the claim that you're making? Because it comes much later in Hinduism's history.
Time. Arjuna?
So the Vedas are considered to be eternal knowledge that are revealed at different times and places, and Bhagavad Gita is considered to be spoken by Krishna 5,000 years ago, and so I guess if it was spoken in a different yuga, it might have different iterations, but the teachings themselves are eternal. As for where we get this hierarchy, well, we've got, well, you're the one telling... If you don't know this, you know, I should probably
floundering so hard, like he doesn't know what to say. That was funny.
This is a question to expose your ignorance, but if you don't know that there's Vedic texts that are intended for an audience in the mode of passion, and tamas, in the mode of passion, rajas, and in the mode of goodness, sattva, then you're in no position to quote texts and tell me what you think they mean. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says at the end, surrender all varieties of religion and center unto me, which is to say that a lot of the other Vedic teachings are, you know, meant for a certain time and place or meant to get you at a certain level, but the highest thing is actually pure devotion to God. And Bhagavatam, we have quotes saying the spotless Purana, this Amala Purana, kicks out all versions of cheating religion. We have Vedavyas, who compiled the Vedas, was lamenting after he compiled the Vedas, and Narada Muni comes along and says to him, why are you lamenting? What Vedavyas is asking what is lamenting, and Narada explains the reason why you're lamenting is because...
All right, we're getting a story, finally. Doesn't say what verse he's talking about, doesn't say where it's coming from, nothing like that. He's just going to tell us the story.
Because you've done jagutsitam, it's a Sanskrit word. You've done something terrible by writing all these Vedas because they're going to mislead people. And then he went on to write the Bhagavatam, which glorifies exclusive devotion to God. A lot of these quotes, too, they've got to be understood in a hyperbolic way. There's many Indian commentators before a modern audience who said they understand these talks of punishments and different things are hyperbolic. It's the idea of dangling in front of people a heavy punishment, like where you'll go in your next life if you don't act. It's like a kind of CBT to get people, you know, thinking about things and transforming their consciousness.
Got it, Daniel?
So what you're saying that the Mahabharata or the Bhagavad Gita doesn't have any interpolations, like this is false. There are interpolations that Hindu scholars talk about. I can share my screen and show some of the articles.
Dude, it's way older than the Quran. It's way older than Christianity. So yeah, it has the interpolations of probably oral transmission and then manual copying, like every single text.
But this is where I think Daniel has the correct argumentation, because it's Arjuna who's putting this forward. I agree with you, but Arjuna's not agreeing with this. Arjuna's not being honest that there are interpolations. This is why we have to take what Arjuna is saying, not about Hinduism, but Arjuna's positionality on Hinduism. The problem is he tried to whitewash Hinduism and try to make it perfectly fit his narrative. He can't do that, and that's what Daniel's putting his feet to the fire. And that's what I think is the problem here. But I agree with you 100%. But that's the problem, is that Arjuna has set this up. He's set up the trap that he's falling into.
That is true. Self-inflicted wound.
Exactly. You're correct.
That are talking about
yeah.
this. James,
Yeah, Mahabharat's
Ready.
considered to have got different versions, and
yeah. So can I share my screen, James?
Ready.
there's
Yeah. So here is the Mahabharata exists in many versions and translations, but how many people actually read it? There's a scholarly article, editions and interpolations in the Bhagavad Gita by L. Bhargava. So this is another. I haven't read these articles, but this is just to bring.
No! No! How do we deal with that? Like, oh, look at this. I haven't read it, but look at this. Like, you don't get to shine. Like,
Well,
I'm not a baby. You don't get to like dangle your keys and consider it done. Like, this is a debate.
well, think about it from his position. What he's dealing with is that Arjuna brought up this argument where he's like,
I know.
and the thing is, so he's like, I don't have a chance to read it, but I'm like, I'm going to Google this and find out that you're wrong. So pretty much every single thing that Arjuna is saying, he's like, you're wrong. I don't even have to read it. Look at the title here. This shows that you're wrong. The problem is Arjuna has set up this whole thing to his utter destruction. You're correct. It's like, yeah, you should read it, but Daniel's like, this is easy for me. Look at that smug face he's making. He's like,
yeah.
He's like, really? You're going to say these big, huge claims? Let me Google it for 5 seconds. Oh, your claim is false. Your claim is false. And and pretty much every single argument Arjuna has made has been debunked, and it's hurt him. It's hurt him greatly.
I actually thought I didn't think of the sequence of events like, yeah, I'll Google it right now, kind of a thing. Because yes,
that's what he did. He Googled it right now.
Yeah,
that's literally what he did.
Yeah, that was my.
He should have probably said that though. I think that would have been a brilliant frame. He's like,
yes,
oh,
because
really?
I was like bringing up something, but not having read it, unless it's like a very stupid point, like someone makes like a trivial claim, and you just go like taka taka taka.
Well, and that's the problem. He's made a bunch of trivial claims that he can't back up. And he's like, oh, your claim, you believe in this claim? Let me Google this and show you. Look at this scholar. He says you're wrong. Look at this article here. It says you're wrong. I just looked this up in 5 seconds. All of these things you believe in, I can disprove it in 5 seconds. And you're right. Like, see, you didn't pick that up because he didn't clearly announce.
Right. He didn't
state that. If he did that, that would have been helpful for him.
Yeah.
Doubt on your outrageous claim that there are no interpolations in Bhagavad Gita. So
Bhagavad Gita is considered to be free of interpolations. I mean, I could look at the article and see, but if neither of us have read it, then we're kind of arguing out of ignorance. Another question for you on you trying to tell me.
Was my time up, James?
Oh, sorry.
You still got 55 seconds.
Yeah, so I just bring this up. I haven't done research into textual preservation of the Bhagavad Gita, but I mean, you're saying that it's thousands of years old. Like when's the earliest manuscript from? The fact that the earliest manuscripts are thousands of years after when the text allegedly originated, that's a good indication that it's probably full of changes, evolution, and transmission errors. And there are plenty of scholars of Hinduism that are apparently writing about this, so people can go and research it and find out for themselves. But my point still stands that there is no Hindu text that doesn't have textual errors, interpolations. So if you want to say like the entire Hindu tradition should be thrown in the trash because we don't know like what is true, like how do we even know that there's a God named Krishna?
The same way that you know that there's a law. Dude. Right? Daniel, how do we know Allah? I find this fascinating when people are, when it gets to this point, you know that my head reads this as my fantasy is better than yours. And it is so amusing and funny.
I think what he's trying to do, what Daniel is doing here, and this is one of his tactics, is he's like, look, it's not about him. It's not about where he stands. He's like, I'm fine where I stand. You are claiming that your thing is the glorious beacon of light, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not. Daniel's very comfortable in his shoes. He doesn't feel offended by anything you bring against Islam. So you making those arguments would not be hurtful to Daniel. He's like, yeah, I know. But I accept this already. I grant that Allah is real. And I grant this type of situation. And there is some kind of chain of transmission. He's like, your tradition is so ancient and old. Okay, you don't even have like a chronological linear history. How do you know that these texts existed when they did? My tradition's newer. It's 1400 years ago. It's much easier to trace. Yours is not. Yours is from thousands of years ago. You're claiming that the text is at this time. How do you know that?
In all of this we've seen so far, it's like an hour and 15 minutes. That's the best argument. Like when it comes to this, old could be like, it could be equated to worst kept, right? I think that is the best argument this thing has had so far, and it's not from even the debate. It came from you, so that is pretty cool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
this
it.
is like they have both been talking about stupid shit since the start.
Well, you remember heated debates. It's very similar to the heated debates,
Yes.
except heated debates was more heated. Like he was a heated guy. He's like, I want you to know about Muhammad Mustafa Rasulullah. Look how great he is. 9-year-old girl. 9-year-old girl. And that's what he would do. He would screech at you remember that what he would do? He's like, 9-year-old girl. And I was like, oh my God. And then when Daniel brought up Devadasi, he was silent. He had nothing to say. And then the spaceship and the Jeanette, whatever, the scientific stuff, it's so funny.
Wait, what was it? The plastic surgery and the flying bikes. They're like bike planes, something like that.
It's like, really? Is this what you're talking about?
How do we even know that there is a god named Vishnu? Like, these could be interpolations. Someone like maybe in the 2nd century named Vishnu wanted to be a part of Hinduism and be considered a god, and he just added it in there. Like, how can you know anything? Like, this is what you have reduced Hinduism to, because you have selectively.
Well, obviously there weren't records, but those things did happen, and there surely is a precursor to what the formalization of Hinduism was. Because that's like, Daniel, you probably won't like this, but the character of Yahweh, I've seen so many reports. There's a channel called Esoterica with a guy that's a Jewish PhD, and he makes the argument that Yahweh comes from one storm god, the stories of like one storm god and another god that got kind of amalgamated into
deleted the texts that don't match your
shit. They got amalgamated into a new character. So we know how these stories move across time. Daniel, your story is the evolution of a previous framework of stories. So this is no real deal either.
liberal worldview. And this leads you to big problems. It basically destroys the epistemological foundations of your entire religion. And I don't think you realize that. I don't think many Hindus realize that. But that's why it's important to be consistent about how you approach texts. And Muslims are consistent about that. I haven't denied any text. I haven't denied blasphemy punishments. I haven't denied jihad, because these are textually based in the Quran and in Hadith. So I'm a consistent person. I believe that my religion is from God. I believe my religion has been preserved. And that's why I invite people to accept Islam and to understand what.
No, thank you. If you're inviting me, I would rather not. If he's just inviting me, maybe.
But there's a better chance if I'm inviting you as opposed to Daniel.
No,
the likelihood is much lower.
No. I'll Daniel, I'll trade you. I'll go to one of your meetings or whatever it is we need to do if you come to one of my meetings. And we'll see what's what.
Which meeting will be liked more, huh? Which meeting will be more influential?
Daniel. I don't think I can. I don't. There are some people which I think it's like, if I took you to one of my parties, you might see a little bit more like I do, right? If you go and dance all night among free people, yada yada.
I think Daniel came from a secular background. Like he was Muslim, but he came from his. So I think he did party before he became religious. So I think he would be familiar with it. It's just, you know, he
Fair
kind
enough,
of
yeah.
I think just for him. But you're right. With other people, it'd be different. But I think for him,
there are some people that I do. It's like, yeah, if I took you on like a debauchery weekend with me, I could deconvert you. Some people do give me that impression, but not Daniel. I don't. Daniel is, I think, is too far gone here. I don't know.
You're silly.
These laws within Islam, like conquest, like having restrictions on blasphemy, so that God doesn't become a joke, so that God doesn't become the butt of jokes and
oh yes, Daniel, I love that, because the omnipotent power of the world can take number one, doesn't have a sense of humor. Yes, very important. Number one, doesn't have a sense of humor. Number two, he needs you to defend him because he doesn't have a sense of humor. What God is that? I don't get it. To me, that sounds way more like a mechanism of control over the people by the creators of the religion so that it doesn't get criticized. You know who does that, Daniel? Dictatorships and authoritarian regimes do that. I don't know. I don't think that is necessarily a good thing, Daniel.
religiosity is destroyed. We need to have blasphemy punishments. This is something that I invite all people to consider in accepting Islam. But your approach is epistemologically devastating for Hinduism because you have undermined the textual basis of the Hindu religion. So the only way that we can know what Hinduism is by what you say. What is Arjuna's understanding of Hinduism? And we just have to take your word for it. This is not very compelling. I came here to debate Hinduism, not to debate your personal understanding of what Hinduism is.
Well, there are levels of that because you can go by, scholarship, but at some degree or another, everyone has their own personal ideas about everything, right? You sometimes defer all of your thinking to somebody else, but there is a common, like Reddit atheist argument that there's as many Christian denominations as there are actual Christians, like in number, right? Which is broadly true and also broadly untrue. It is kind of like a paradox because there are some people who are like that, who have their own, but there's also organized people, groups of people that believe the same things, and they talk and they debate with each other and they establish standards. So again, this debate was both just throwing pointless stuff at each other. No real discussion was ever had here. For example, it was fun because I laughed a lot from the irrelevance of everything. I don't know if you probably got triggered in a different way, Isa, because this hits more closer to home to you than me.
Well, I think it hits my academic space of religion, like being an academic in religion. I'm really into like being honest with the literature and representing it in the best way possible. And I don't think that that's what's happening here.
No.
I think there's a lot of, and I think I don't like cherry picking stuff. I think you need to be, I think you need credibility and you need honesty, and I just feel there's a lot of dishonesty here, and that's problematic for me.
The thing that I don't like is agreeing with freaking Daniel Pikachu. God damn it. Arjuna, that's why you lose this debate, because you're making me side with him.
Well, and he's just not, he's not a good debater.
No.
I mean, I think that's one of the issues with, there's a pro and con with MDD. The pro is we get to have lots of people from different kinds of backgrounds, and I think that's awesome and great.
That's cool.
But the con is that if you don't do any kind of like vetting, you can get really kind of deleterious debates. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, remember that the one debate that was with Justin from the construction zone and a guy called Wi-Fi Gospel. That was the title was "Did Jesus Fulfill Prophecy?" Right?
Right.
And Wi-Fi Gospel refused to talk about prophecy for even a second. Like, all his argument was the Darth Dawkins, like, oh, atheists can't have knowledge, which is a very stupid argument, especially when there is a narrow topic like, did Jesus fulfill prophecy? Like, how do you get people like that that was such a waste of time. It was funny as hell, don't get me wrong, because he floundered and he's like, but you atheists can't have knowledge. Yeah, we're supposed to talk about the prophecies, thank you. And yeah, that was, but it needs betting. Like, this is too much. It's a little bit aggravating.
And one thing to add to that too. One thing to add to what you were saying is, like, when I first stepped up to do debates, I was actually expecting to get some kind of test or something, right? Like, I was expecting something. It was like, okay, we'll set you up with debates. I was like, okay, fine. I thought you wanted to know what my qualifications are for talking about this, because I have qualifications. Like, I thought you would want to know my research and nothing. It was just like, yeah, you can come up. And I was like, okay. And then when I was like, I asked, could I debate for Judaism? Because I said, I think I could. When he was looking for people to debate for Judaism, he's like, well, you're Muslim, quote unquote. You're in this box, so you can't debate for Judaism. And I'm like, why not?
Huh, interesting.
And I thought it was weird, because he's like, well, he's like, are you even a real Muslim? I'm like, who cares what I am? It doesn't matter if I'm a Muslim or not. We're debating points. It's not, we're not debating identity politics. And I found that really weird. I'm like, who cares what people identify as? Like, like, if you're atheist, there's not really any identification. It's just like, you don't believe in God. That's it. There's not some religious title that you have to hold on to. You're just like, yeah, God's not real. That's it. That's all an atheist is, right? So
there's no way you can tell also either.
So I'm like, yeah, and there are people who are atheists who believe in magical things. You can be an atheist and believe in fairies and dwarfs. There are atheists like that. But I'm like, this is silly. It's so silly to get into identity politics. That's my opinion.
It is quite funny when people, especially for you, when you don't fit into their little box and they freak out. They is kind of funny to be like, no, but you should be like that. It's like, well, no. Okay, I didn't get that memo from you, so I'll just be the way I am.
You're completely correct.
You. Blessed be he, and
that was the problem.
The other racist guy is like, but no, you should be Jew or how, like, and you can see them like spitting and spiraling, like, no, he doesn't fit.
I don't fit their narrative. You're completely correct, and I think that's completely
and it
fair.
freaks them out.
You're completely correct, and I think what I said, I was like, look, I will, like, when I asked, could I debate this thing? I'm like, I think I would have done a better debate for this type of situation, and it's sad because, like, it's so limiting.
Just on the basis of, like, pure debate skills, I could argue for Hinduism way better than these two fools.
I think you would have been much better as a debater for Hinduism, and you could have just Googled the stuff 1 hour ahead, and I think you would have been a better debater.
A little bit of prep, and you can make, like, way better arguments than that. Especially to counter, especially knowing, because that's the other part, knowing your opponent. I don't think this guy he can't be too familiar with Daniel, or he would have known.
He claimed that he was. He claimed that he was.
He
said I watched Daniel's debates and I refuted them, and I'm like, the problem with you, like, that is actually a problem with certain people who are practitioners of a religion. They know the language of their religion too much, that they're stuck in these kind of nomenclature that they don't know actually how to communicate. So they're not good communicators.
Yeah, but when you're in public, like, one word, like, you've been trying to rebut Daniel's argument with one word, that just doesn't work, dude. Like, what the hell? You need to explain, flesh out You're floundering. I'm sorry. I hate myself. I'm agreeing with Pikachu.
So, yeah, I mean, the Bhagavad Gita, even if there is some scholarly debate on different versions of it, there's not much debate on the differences between the different manuscripts will be very minor. I've never heard anyone bring this up before except for you, which is clear evidence that you're not interested in understanding tradition on its own terms. You just want to make it look bad at any cost. So with regard to interpolation, just because the Manusmriti is full of...
That is kind of the point, genius. You need to rebut. You need to... Yes. Oh my god. And Daniel is not going, like, he's bringing up like bad stuff, but he's not putting you in a very like logically complicated kind of a thing. It's all surface level Reddit here. What is it called? Polemics. For those of you who don't know how apologetics is, the field of defending your religion. Polemics is the field of attacking someone else's religion, right?
Manusmriti is full of interpolations. It doesn't mean that all Vedic texts are the same degree of authentic. We can have books that are more authentic and less authentic based on various factors of how they've been preserved over time. And the Manusmriti is not even like considered to be a timeless teaching. It's adjusted over time. Like a modern king will update it with laws that actually make sense for the current time. Your point about consistency, I actually find that one really funny, because when I was looking at your video where you talked about, you complained about Christianity, oh, it's inconsistent. And the Old Testament said you should stone people for whatever. And in the New Testament, it's more compassionate. And I didn't get the argument at first. And eventually somebody pointed out to me, he's saying it would be good if it had the stoning law.
Yes, very good. Finally, that is a valid argument. Like, hey, you're levying this criticism against me, right? But this is something ubiquitous across history. Like your own religion does that, Mr. Daniel. And so do the religions that are precursor to yours, that is Christianity and Judaism. So where do we go from there now, right?
The whole way through, because then it'll be consistent. But consistency of something immoral is not actually a good thing. So if there's something immoral in there, it should be adjusted. But the Vedic idea is there's actually different seasons, and in Kali Yuga people are more degraded. And when you're dealing with more degraded people, you need different rules. Like if you're running a kindergarten, you have different rules for
more. What is he talking about? Degraded people? What the hell? Do you know? I kind of got lost with that.
Could you rewind? Oh,
if he means more ancient, I wouldn't say degraded. I would say like less refined, or like we are more developed when it comes to like morality and that kind of stuff. But yes, we'll go back.
People are more. If there's something immoral in there, it should be adjusted. But the Vedic idea is there's actually different seasons, and in Kali Yuga people are more degraded. And when you're dealing with more degraded people, you need different rules. Like if you're running a kindergarten, you have different rules for the kids you're dealing with than if you're dealing with university educated people. So similarly, the laws for society change depending on the caliber of the people. The last point on this is about interpretive tradition. Can you, interpretive tradition of Sampradaya, can you show me a chain of disciplic succession that supports your interpretations of these? Because a lot of people think a lot of that stuff's either hyperbolic, interpolated, or doesn't apply now.
Yeah, so where is the authority behind your interpretation? I can ask. I show textual citation. So the burden of proof is on you to show how there is another equally authoritative source that contradicts that. You have just made a bunch of claims without not a...
How... Let's say he finds the source, right? He has let's be generous with Arjuna here. Let's say we find the source we have for his interpretation. How can we determine? And I brought this up so many times against so many different people. Like, how do we determine which interpretation is the better? There is no objective way to determine something that is like subjective as your interpretation of a text, even if that interpretation is taking it literally. because that is a choice. That is one interpretation, taking it literally or taking it allegorically, or just like injecting whatever you want into the text and like massaging it to believe. Like, though all of those are objectively immeasurable in which one is the best or like the correct one or whatever, right? They all have the same flaws. So how can you determine that? I don't know how they do that, how they think that they can do that. So it's the same thing to bring up whichever one, but all are equally valid epistemologically. Like, this guy is a doofus, but let's say he was debating someone like a scholar of Hinduism. How can you determine which one, right?
Single textual citation. Oh, Hinduism is about following higher ideals, and the texts of Hinduism, those only apply to specific times and not later times. Like, you haven't provided a single authority or textual citation to justify any of these claims. Second of all, fine, you want to say that the Bhagavad Gita only has slight interpolations or could possibly have slight interpolations. That's different from what you initially said. So you had to revise that after I corrected you. But the second point is that even if we say that the Bhagavad Gita has been preserved and you are taking it as the Bible of Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita has the caste system. Arjuna is being chastised by Krishna. Why is he not following his caste duty as a Kshatriya to go to war and kill? This is what Krishna is saying to Arjuna, and he's chastising him for not following his dharmic duty. So caste system is endorsed in the Gita. Conquest and war is endorsed in the Gita. So even if you want to reduce all of Hinduism to just one particular text, and only in the way that you interpret that text.
I mean, you have to do something, Arjuna, because like he has you against the wall. He gave you a two-part argument and you attempted to reply to only one, which kind of ineffectively, but okay. You tried at least. You need to address what he's talking about, dude.
It is still endorsing caste system, caste duty, bad consequences for violating caste duty, going to war for conquest, and then the reward of heaven. If you die in war, you go to heaven according to the Mahabharata, and you get apsaras, you get these divine maidens to pleasure you in heaven. This is also endorsed in these exact texts that you say are preserved and are the basis of.
Yeah. So Daniel, you don't believe in the 72 virgins or what? Like how it is happening, Isa? How is Daniel getting away with bringing up like ladies in the afterlife?
I don't know. I don't think this is a strong position for this particular argument personally, but
like, what is the best? Is the best to get more ladies in the afterlife or less ladies in the afterlife?
Well, I mean, Krishna has a bunch of ladies too. In the Krishna Leela narrative, Krishna has a lot of, like, a big harem of women. He's known for that. But
I mean, I know what I would want, but
I mean, for me, like, if you're asking me personally, I mean, I don't.
No, I was.
You're just saying in general. I think it's individual.
Like rhetorically, like how do we determine what is best?
Okay, so it depends on how people even view sexual relations,
right?
And view relationships in general. Do people like conflict? I mean, if your relationships are going to have conflict in them, you're going to have tension, and sexual relations.
It's heaven, so.
But the problem is, it's like. What does that mean? Is it a continuation of what we have now? If you're just saying, oh, it's a perfect version of what we have now with no flaws, then that's a problem, because let's talk about sexual intimacy. Certain sexual intimacy has tension, and that is good. That's a part of, things like you have, like makeup sex, for example, right? That's something that, like, you had all this tension, and then it's like really great,
that is true.
Intimate relations. And I'm like, do you not have that happen because you have conflict? You get what I mean? Like, it's more nuanced and complex.
You can fight on purpose. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm like, if these women are always just fully in agreement with you, is that going to be really a
That's
hot and
good.
awesome relationship? Because some
That's
people might
boring
want that.
really fast.
You get what I mean? Like, that's the problem.
Daniel's idea, listen, 72 virgins. That sounds awful. Teaching for eternity. No. And then I've heard like so much weirdness about that specific part of, because I kind of like to ask Muslims, how does that work? And I've heard such a variety of things. Like that someone told me that they were kind of like bots, that they were women, but they weren't fully humans who had been alive, that they're like specifically created for the person that is in heaven, which sounds eerie as hell, that there wouldn't be people. And the others are like, someone told me they don't have free will, so it gets you in a whole bunch of specific problems with theology and that kind of stuff. I think we're going to have to do a part 3. I am a bit tired today and my throat is going.
Too. I'm pretty tired also.
But we'll wrap it up for tonight. Fortunately, this will be right here. When we view it on YouTube, it.
Do we want to finish this interaction so we get right to the Q&A?
Yes, sure.
We'll just be quiet and just let it go, and then be done with that portion.
Hinduism. So
Take it over, Arjuna.
So yeah, it's not my understanding. I'm following an interpretive tradition that is called Gaudiya Vaishnavism. There's a whole chain of succession. It's something like how you want your surgeries to be done by someone who's.
Yeah, but you didn't explain much. This is the first time. We are an hour and 20 minutes in that we hear like which flavor of Hinduism you like, my good sir.
Learn from an actual surgeon who's done surgeries themselves. You don't just learn from a book.
That's we don't interpret heart surgery, my guy. Not the same.
The books don't exist in a vacuum. So I'm not saying you need to quote a Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya. I'm saying you need to go quote some Acharya somewhere in some interpretive tradition to support your claims. Because like the debate here isn't, well, to some extent the debate is what do the Vedas actually teach, but like we don't want to get too bogged down on that. It's about, I can show that Islam is more violent without that. I mean, you yourself here are defending slavery, apostasy laws. The Barbary pirates, I want to hear you say, when they told Thomas Jefferson that they were doing all this plunder because the Quran told them to.
Yar, pirates.
I want you to tell me that they were misunderstanding the Quran, not following Islam properly. Otherwise, I don't know how you can argue that Islam isn't a violent religion, because what the Barbary pirates did, 200 years of devastating that coastline, so that like merchant sailors were saying, I would rather stay home and starve than risk getting captured by these monsters. And then when confronted on it, they quote the Quran and say the Quran is telling us to do this. So you're defending, you're actively defending actual forms of violence. Like you're saying, oh, the Barbary pirates, they were reacting to a slave trade. Like, yeah, well, history is full of all sorts of people doing bad things. What a religion is meant to do is speak truth to power and tell us to pull our socks up and be like, you guys are not acting right. Here's what a higher ideal is. Here's how to be a better person. What Islam has done for a lot of its history is just say what we're doing is right because Allah told us to and because the Prophet did it and it's all good. That's what happens when you mix the church with the state. It just ends up justifying its own bad actions.
That's a good point. But he doesn't go deeper into that. That it is pretty violent. For example, that if you are a Christian, let's talk about like the times of Muhammad. If you're a Christian living among the Muslims in Mecca, let's say, and you do something that it might be fine on your religion, but might not be fine with them, then you could get in trouble there. That is a problem. So government and religion being enforced by the government always ends up not too good for the people of not that particular religion. And that is a great point, which he doesn't really understand, that he can lay onto that thick. But yeah, he's super dumb.
Daniel, thoughts?
So you're asking me to cite an authority, and I have cited authorities, but you don't accept those authorities because there are people in the past who have wrote down what Hinduism is, and what they've written down has been revered by generations and generations. Countless Hindus have revered these writings, but you're throwing all of that under the bus. So the only kind of authority that I can cite for you is a modern authority from your particular Hindu text. And guess what? There are plenty of reformers and plenty of libtards, essentially.
Oh my God. I forgot he said that a couple of times in this debate. That is hilarious. Libtard.
It's the libtards. You gotta know the libtards are the worst of the worst, right?
For lack of a better word, who will say that, yeah, Hinduism is all about love and peace. Yeah, of course. Anyway, that's a trivial exercise to find someone who says that. You'll find Muslims who say that as well. You'll have Muslims, if you're debating like a liberal Muslim instead of me, who would say that, yeah, Islam is all about peace and there's no such thing as jihad. Jihad just means, you know, refraining from eating fattening foods or something like that. Like you'll find.
Yeah.
Excellent point. I think this wins. This point wins. This is the point that I brought up. You can bring up a liberal Muslim and they'll say the same thing.
Right.
People in every single religion who take this same exact strategy that you're taking. It's just dishonest, it's not satisfying, and it's epistemologically destructive for your entire religion. We can't take religions like this seriously.
I mean, again, we're stuck in the same way of Daniel. You think it's epistemologically destructing, and I think, for example, that it's the way to go. I'd rather have that kind of a thought than that. So we're in the same stalemate and that we have been for an hour and 23 minutes.
Take religions who do this, who liberalize in this way by throwing out their canon, by throwing out their religious text. I don't take them seriously because it's just a matter of convenience. Second of all, the Barbary pirates, you want me to address that? The Muslims understood that the world is a world of limited resources, scarce resources, and all people are going to fight. You keep talking about the Barbary pirates teaching Thomas Jefferson. Do you realize that Thomas Jefferson also had slaves? Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner, and he had no objection to slavery. He actually reproduced with some of his slaves, his sex slaves.
I'm sorry, that's a winner. That's a winner there.
Yeah,
winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah.
No, I think that he's finished. He finished the Barbary pirates point. He's like, oh, you think Thomas Jefferson's good?
Right.
He had slaves and he assaulted them too. How do you feel about that?
It was like, oh yeah, what about this drug dealer that got exterminated by another drug dealer? It's like, yeah, we're still in the same situation. It's like a slaver got taken out by another slaver. Good. Like, it's just consolidation of power. It's not a moral action, a positive moral action. This is wild. But Daniel is he's fast. Like, he thinks on his feet. Or this guy is too slow to jump.
So Thomas Jefferson didn't have any moral problem with the Quran because it endorsed slavery. In fact, no one had a moral problem with slavery prior to modern liberalism. And modern liberalism...
Arjuna, are you swayed yet? Has Daniel won you?
All right. I think we can leave it here that James rants a little bit. And we'll see what his response is, but oh my... let me see. Can we go here? Yes. Hold on. Let me see if I can try this with the few of us that are left. I'll remove that. Okay. Stop sharing. I'll remove you from the screen and myself, Isa, for just a second. We'll be right back. Don't go. Okay, so you saw the image. You saw the image of the background. Who is giving the mate to who? I'll put it back up because I just thought of a way to do it. But I'll give you a second to think. Who is giving the mate to who? And I will put up a poll. Give me 1 second because I'll keep it on screen while we do that poll. So you can figure it out and we can play this little game. Okay. Who is giving the mate to who? Let me go to YouTube so we can make the poll. Let's start a poll.
That's a great image.
Yep. Stole it from the internet. But I got the idea. I'm going to take a new one, so we don't get into trouble. But this all keeps. I've been so busy that I ended up work at 6, which sometimes I get some time. Who's giving the mate to who? Left to right, right to left. Start poll. There we go. Isa, who do you think is giving the mate to who? Max, you can't answer this in the chat because you probably know.
I have no idea, but I can guess. I think it would be kind of cool if the one on the left
It doesn't this is 50-50. It doesn't make to guess. There has to be a reason for it.
Well, it kind of seems like the person from the left is giving to the right. It seems like they're kind of grabbing it. That's what I think it's kind of cool.
I would say, because I'm going to demonstrate. Please be quick because I'm going to spoil it right now. No, 50-50. 2 votes more. Yes, on the screen, we have a mate in the middle. So who is giving the mate to who? Is it going that way, right to left, or is it going left to right?
I'm going with the right to left.
Okay. Did you vote in the poll?
Where's the poll? I mean, that's
on
YouTube.
the YouTube. Yes.
Give me a second. I'm going to go to the YouTube real quick.
Yes, sir.
I'll vote. I mean, if I get it wrong, I'll figure it out.
I mean, you're probably all going to have to guess, but I think there is a very clear explanation for this.
All right, give me a second. Shoot, this is weird. Found it. Now let's see.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Yes. No, back to 50-50. No. Damn it. All right. Only 3 people participated, but I wanted... we'll finish this. I should have waited until there were more people watching because I'm a dummy. But we'll probably do it again. Don't spoil it. If you're here, don't spoil it for the rest of the people. They could watch it. Fuck. I keep failing. It's okay. Now, most people are right-handed, so you would go like that. So this is my left hand. You would go like that, and you would give the mate straight away to the person. So I think based on the average of people that the guy on the left is giving it to the guy on the right, because if you even look at my grip, this is my natural grip. It's the exact same grip. Pretty cool stuff, right? Or am I just being stupid? Ragebot says they're fighting over it. That could also be. But in general, mate kind of unites people because it's a very social activity. All righty. Joe Heron says, I was the only correct person in the poll. If that's true, I mean, it is. It is. Isa, anything you would like to say before we go?
I think that this is an interesting conversation, and I think we need to. I'm glad to delve deeper. I hope with the we'll start off with the James stuff, and I think we'll just go through it quickly. So
With the what?
The James stuff, like you said, he's going to be talking, so we'll just like maybe go on 2 speed to just get through all of his stuff, so we can get to the next section.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone, thank you so much for dropping by. MC Toon is still live, so we're going to redirect to him. Thank you for being here. Do the social things like share, subscribe, send this to a friend, send this to your significant other. Go to the corner, yes, the corner of your seat and yell, subscribe to Yerba Mate Talks. It doesn't have the same ring to it. I might have to change that, but we'll keep the screaming and we'll see what happens. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you, and we don't have an outro yet, so it will just end.